Hi, today we're making fig Newtons from scratch, and they're going to be gluten-free. To start with, these are home canned figs. We can them whole, as you can see. I'm going to drain these because you want to dry this out and make a fruit leather. So you want as much moisture as possible. I'm going to mash them up. We're going to add a little sugar to it to give it a little bit of a sweet taste, but if you don't want the sugar, you can add honey or something like that, but just not too much. We don't want them real sweet. We're going to mash these up, just kind of like this consistency right here. All of it looking like that. And then, okay, we have our consistency here. Kind of looks like puree. You can use a food processor, I guess, or something, but I just mashed it by hand. And we're going to put it in our pans. You want to kind of get it really thin across here. I'm going to try to do this in 2 pans. This has to cook for 1 hour at 300 and 1 hour at 200 because you want the consistency to dry out enough that when you make your fig Newtons, you do not have the fig part falling out of it. And we're just going to kind of move this and spread it as thin as you can in that pan, because it wouldn't take as long. If it takes more than 2 hours, then you just kind of watch it till it gets to the consistency of being dried out, but at least an hour at 300. Here we are back with our fig fruit. It stayed in the oven about an hour at 300 and 30 minutes at 200 because it was starting to get pretty done, and you can see there's no way this is going to run out of my fig Newton. You might want to stop it. See, this is the consistency you want right here. And you can probably do it a little bit thicker in the pan, and just so that it dries out enough it won't run out of your pastry. Okay, we're back. We're going to make the pastry for our fig Newton. I've got 1 egg that I've just kind of beat up a little. To that, we are adding 3 tablespoons of milk. I'm using half and half, but whatever milk you want to use. And to this, we're going to add our vanilla. Calls for half a teaspoon. I'm not a big measure. I just add a touch to Danny's dismay. And then we're going to mix this up a little and sit it over to the side for a few minutes. Alright, in our other bowl, we're adding our flour, our sugar, and our butter, and mix it. And then we're going to add the liquid back to this before making it'll end up being kind of like a pie crust. It's going to be something that we're going to roll out. So we're adding 1½ cups of flour. It calls for 1½ cups of self-rising flour. I'm using Bob's Red Mill gluten-free baking flour. You use it 1 to 1. The only deal is I have to add my salt and my baking powder to it. So we're going to do 1½ cups. And we're adding that to our stick of butter. Okay. Then we need, with that I usually add about a tablespoon. It's not really quite a tablespoon, but pretty close, of baking powder, because these are not going to rise a lot. And then a sprinkle of salt. Okay, to that, this butter has been softened at room temperature all morning, and we're just going to cut this in. I'll probably get a fork and cut all this in. Okay, for all of you, this is what it's going to look like. It's kind of flaky because you've got your butter and sugar and flour mixed in. And basically that's what you want, is a flaky look to it. We're adding this mixture in. That's our milk, our egg, and our vanilla. With gluten-free, sometimes you don't get the same look that you would in regular pie crust. This is not looking wet yet, so I'm going to probably add a little bit more milk because, like I told you before, rice flour tends to absorb your liquid a lot more than regular flour, and I usually end up adding a little bit more, sometimes a third of whatever the recipe calls for in milk. I end up adding that much more sometimes. We want to be able for this to hold together, and I'm a hands-on person, so we're going to just see what this looks like when you start. Because with rice flour, one thing is you can't hardly roll it out. So I end up mashing this, putting this in between some paper, wax paper, and it's starting to be sticky. So that's what we want. We want a sticky consistency. You see it sticking into my hands. We're going to roll it between wax paper, or mash it down, press it down between wax paper, and then add our filling. Okay, we're going to try this with the rolling pin. Kind of roll it out, flatten it a little, in between two pieces of, well, this one piece folded over paper, wax paper, a rectangle, I guess you would say. And in order to smooth it up, I'm taking cut that little piece. Since that's thin, I just fold it over a little. And this gets to be pretty easy to work with once you get the hang of it. Again, we're going to cut it out 3 pieces. Add some of our fruit to it. And roll it up. It may not be exactly like a fig Newton, but it's the basic concept of it. And we're going to see how it tastes after putting it in the oven. Okay, so these are fig Newtons. I know they're not the best in the world, but without being able to roll out like you need to, and making a pie crust and then cutting each piece and everything after you fill it, this is the way I did them. We're going to see what they turn out like. We're going to put them in the oven. Okay, these are my fig Newtons after they came out of the oven. They've been cooling for a few minutes, and let's see what they taste like.
Nice and chewy. You're going to look at that just like a fig Newton ought to be. There. Perfect. I would advise this to anybody who likes to eat fig Newtons. Homemade. They taste a little different than them in the store does. Tastes better. That's what I'm talking about. That's some good eating.